Hello and welcome to Book Sense. I'm Dr. Rick Chambers.
And I'm Gail Huxley.
And this is part of our series of Internet Archetypes. And this one is on the magician, Cami
Petyn is how I assume. I'm sorry if it's wrong.
Yes. And in this series, we look at Internet figures who use their public personas to examine common archetypes. Our intention is to learn about archetypes and see how they're still relevant to our lives today and on an individual and cultural scale. Our goal is, by the end of the series, you will be able to recognize the presence of the 12 major archetypes. I'll say this in every video discussing public figures. We are drawing from what they have shared of themselves online, how they portray themselves, and if necessary, any commentary or news commenting about them. There's no way for us to know who they really are, even if we can make some assumptions based on their actions.
Yes, and that is why we are reading from script and being very careful each time, and also repeating that each time. So we looked at the ruler archetype using Jeffree Star as an example in the first video. In our last video, we talked about the explorer archetype, and Kat Black's Internet persona was a wonderful representative of the explorer. This video is about the magician archetype. We have chosen the Internet persona of Cami Petyn, a singer and YouTuber, to represent the magician. We will look at what she has shared of her life and career to help us explain this archetype. The magician is complex, so we're going to explore what we feel are some of the most important aspects of this archetype. We will look at the meaning, positive and negative aspects of this archetype, as well as some examples of manifestations of the magician archetype.
And if you don't know what an archetype is, think of them as original patterns, especially patterns of behavior. And it sounds very strange, but what if they're alive and can live inside you, in events, in civilizations, small groups, and they're revealed through behavior. They are eternal and much bigger than an individual's will. They're not easy to represent in themselves, and you have to look for their effects. Their effects appear in consciousness as images and ideas. These are collective universal patterns or motifs which come from the collective unconscious, and they are the basic content of religions, mythologies, legends, and fairy tales. So already they're stepping out of the normal, everyday, or profane world. And they emerge in individuals through dreams and visions. It makes sense when you're talking about the magician that it follows the explorer. In tarot, the Fool, which can also be called the explorer, is 0, the beginning of the major arcana. The magician is number 1, bringing to fruition what the explorer found on their travels. Bringing to fruition makes things happen by their effort, education, or by tapping into sacred energy. This is all essential to what the archetype is about. You could call the magician a sage, a shaman, a prophet, or an alchemist. The magician is privy to secret and ancient knowledge. They become aware of this knowledge through an education, and often in this education they're initiated into knowledge. Once the knowledge is obtained, the magician has a responsibility to pass this knowledge on through careful guidance. The magician uses their knowledge to transform or bring visions into being. Carol S. Pearson, in her book, The Hero Within, writes, "The archetype of the magician teaches us about creation, about our capacity to bring into being what was never there before, about claiming our roles as co-creators of the universe." There is true magic in the process of creation. Magic, however, doesn't have to be a supernatural force. The magic of creation is not accomplished by spells or thoughts alone. It is manifested by consistent effort. Magic is dedicating yourself to what you want to bring into your life. Even if you question yourself, find it too difficult to bear in the moment, or lose the thread for years at a time, magic is the belief that one day, whenever that may be, it will happen for you. It's returning to the mundane and the process of effort. One of the biggest secrets in magic is that it gets you out of work. Magic is actually work.
Oh, yes. The dedication of the magician to realizing their dreams is what made me first connect Cami Petyn to this archetype. As mentioned earlier, Cami is a musician and YouTuber. She was born in San Diego, California on March 13th, 1996. Her YouTube channel was initially called Supreme Banana. Her first videos, at least from what I could see that's still available on her page, were mostly about veganism and her life. She shared stories about her personal struggles, and she often shared them as a magician would. Cami shared her experiences with anxiety and an eating disorder. Such personal and serious topics are difficult to share on social media, and the audience is affected by the way a story is told. Stories told without consideration can be dangerous, especially to young audiences. A person who has the power to influence and transform, but does not put in the effort to educate themselves and do the inner work, is one type of shadow magician. At worst, a shadow magician is not just inexperienced, they are a trickster. A trickster seeks to cause destructive chaos for their enjoyment and benefit. They want the riches and notoriety that came with harnessing the magician archetype, but a healthy magician is typically not concerned with fame. Cami tells stories of what has caused her to suffer thoughtfully. It is clear that she has done the inner work that allows her to share her life with such vulnerability. Sharing life experience through art, especially in a way that audiences can take something from what the storyteller has experienced, is a quality of the magician. And artists are the magicians of today. It's not just the inner work and storytelling that displays the influence of the magician in Cami's work. It's the way that she has a desire to share what she has learned with others in order to help them. After sharing her story of an eating disorder in 2015, she followed up the next year with how to recover from an eating disorder. In this video, she gave some tips based off of her experiences that could help someone find a path toward recovery. Sharing a personal story, then giving her audience advice, has become a theme on Cami's channel. In a short video from 2016 titled I'm Awake, 3 a.m., Cami talks about being awoken at 3 a.m. due to intrusive thoughts. Her calm voice plays over footage of her doing things to make the most of this anxious sleeplessness. We see her write in her journal as she says, I find that creativity gives the best company at 3 a.m., and often it tends to understand more about you than you do yourself. Towards the end of the video, what looks to be 3 index cards taped to the wall are shown. They say, work harder, do more, and make it happen. She adds a 4th card at the end, and it says, it's okay to do nothing sometimes. I began watching Cami in 2019 when her videos about ayahuasca were recommended to me. Over multiple videos, she shared her process of taking part in plant medicine ceremonies over the course of 4 days at Rhythmia Advancement Center, a retreat in Costa Rica. Cami explained that her reasoning for wanting to do ayahuasca, such as wanting to heal, to open up to others, and to know herself. She wanted to let go of what didn't serve her. But, quoting Carl Jung, she said that she recognizes the importance of having a balanced light and dark side. I recommend these videos if you are interested in plant medicine. Cami explains what she went through, what the ceremony was like with a shaman there to guide people through their journey, and what she learned from the experience. Cami's inclination to understand herself better and enter the realm of sacred knowledge is perhaps another sign of the magician within her. In discussing her experience in ayahuasca, Cami describes an ego death. This is something that many have experienced while on psychedelics. Ego death is described as a complete loss of subjective self-identity. Ego is typically harnessed again once the psychedelic experience is over, but carrying the deconstruction of the ego through life is what the magician must do.
So I like what you did there of talking about the death, an ego death as the deconstruction of the ego. In Stories of Old video, Venturing into Sacred Space, the archetype of the magician, it is said the most important purpose of accessing the magician and venturing into sacred space is the deconstruction of the ego. The magician keeps grandiosity in check, keeps our other archetypes in balance. It is the archetype of thoughtfulness and reflection, of awareness and insight. Great magicians look into the depths of human beings. They have the capacity to deflate arrogance and call us out when we act out of denial or pretense. Stories of Old points out that Robert Moore, co-author of King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, Rediscovering the Archetypes of the Mature Masculine, and note, as always, anyone can harness masculine energy. This book argues for the need of people to understand and control grandiosity and reconnect us to the fabric of the universe. Only then can we channel our energy for the benefit of mankind and the grand process of creation. And this is a really important point because the magician is, in a way, all about power. It's the combination of power and knowledge. And I always think back to in college reading Carlos Castaneda's Four Enemies of a Man of Knowledge. And he was also initiated by a shaman. And the first enemy of a man of knowledge is fear. And when you conquer fear, you gain clarity. And then clarity becomes the enemy of a man of knowledge. And when you're able to conquer clarity, you're given power. And then power becomes the enemy. So very clearly here, and then when you conquer power, you're no longer controlled or desiring of power. Old age is the fourth enemy that he said no shaman defeats completely. And so this is able to look at power in two ways. It's both a gift, but also as a potential enemy. And I think that's very important considering the world today. The Magician archetype video by Stories of Old was so helpful during the process of writing the script for this video. It's a great video to watch, and really the whole channel for understanding both archetypes and the magician and some of these depth psychology issues. This channel and some other channels on YouTube are as good as Joseph Campbell or Carl Jung, and are often more accessible, and the images from the movies really communicate better than a book sometimes. So it's a tremendous resource that is now in the world. We started this channel looking for mystery and wisdom on the internet. The magician who cannot set aside the ego is at risk of becoming a shadow magician. If the magician is not healthy, they may be manipulative or controlling. The shadow magician does not guide people, but manipulates them in a way that only serves their own needs and desires. Sauron from The Lord of the Rings and Voldemort from Harry Potter are examples of the dark magicians. Voldemort possesses the knowledge of the magician, but he is jealous and egotistical. A healthy magician has the power to contribute to healing the world, while the dark magician doesn't care if they destroy the world. We may currently be in an age where the shadow magician is dominant. In King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette write, "Ours is, we believe, the age of the magician, because it is a technological age. It is the age of the magician, at least in his material concern with understanding and having power over nature. But in terms of non-materialistic, psychological, and spiritual initiatory processes, the magician energy seems in short supply. The technological age has brought us modern medicine, technology, and reason, and this was needed to balance harmful aspects of superstition and even religion. Some of the harmful aspects are like hunting of witches, the attack on the feminine, but then modernity has also left us without meaning, and many of us suffer from what I call modernity sickness. There's no longer room for sacred in culture. Modernity is a completely profane space, or just one dimension. This is an idea explored by Mircea Eliade in The Sacred and the Profane. The profane can also be called secular space. It does not have a given inherent meaning. The sacred is often associated solely with religion and spirituality, but in modernity, the sacred is most often experienced in what is important in our private histories, our homes, and the place we first met someone important to us. Robert Moore wrote, "Profane space differs from sacred space in that it has no fixed point or center from which to gain orientation. Profane space has no axis mundi or world tree, no cosmic tree, pillar of knowledge leading to the heavens. This is the experience of modernity. People are unable to locate a center." As William Yeats wrote in the poem, The Second Coming, the center cannot hold. Without a sense of meaning, or as Moore wrote, the libidinal energy could be tapped into for personal and social regeneration, we will continue to spiral and cause destruction to the world. Max Weber, a German historian, sociologist, and political economist, articulated the idea of Western culture as driven by capitalism and disenchantment. You hear this term, disenchantment, a lot today. It was really emphasized and maybe even coined by Max Weber, talking about modernity. A quote, he said, "Rationalization destroyed the authority of magical powers, and it also brought into being the machine-like regulation of bureaucracy, which ultimately challenges all systems of belief." And so in the modern world today, magicians have been totally discounted and seen as anti-rational or non-rational because they are in opposition to this extreme rationality and bureaucracy of the modern world. Rational thinking helps us maintain complex societies, but Weber also stated, rational calculation reduces every worker to a cog in this bureaucratic machine. And seeing himself in this life, people will surely ask how to transform themselves into a bigger cog. The passion for bureaucratization at this meeting drives us to despair. Becoming a part of the system means loss of autonomy, individual freedom, and a life of specialization. Weber believed that the fate of our times is characterized by the disenchantment of the world. He said that systems such as bureaucracy are difficult to break free from, but since they are socially constructed, they can be changed.
It's not my place to speculate what the root of the pain that Cami Petyn has experienced is, but judging, or better yet, perceiving solely from what she has shared, I don't think it's unfair to speculate that modernity sickness may be a part of it. In a video titled, "I'm a Lonely Loner," Cami shares her experience of going to a concert alone, breaking free from the societal norm that it is weird to experience things like concerts alone. I relate to the anxiety that she has shared online, especially on her Instagram page. She talks about self-doubt, anxiety, and derealization, feeling as though she is not present in the world. I relate to many of these struggles, and although my personal history has much to do with it, so does modernity sickness. The constant struggle to break free from the weight of societal norms. As mentioned, Cami takes on her struggles like a magician would. She may have been working on a music career in her private life for quite some time. I think on one video she said she didn't start singing until she was about 22. But I remember seeing Cami share, perhaps sometime last year, that she was going to take music seriously. I see her often on Instagram practicing singing and music theory. Her dedication to learning her craft is inspiring, and it is impressive to see how quickly she has improved and manifested success in music. Now, most of her creative output online is about music and her music process. She has dropped several singles and music videos in the past year. Static, the first music video she released, she described as my anthem to overcoming anxiety. And I also think she said that she wrote the lyrics to it while she was having an anxiety attack. It's difficult to do.
It's cold, the winter when you're getting out.
And another song titled Dissolve, she sings,
Trying to keep my head down, dancing with the dead. These seconds dissolve, keep out of the red. Now all the voices get loud, make a choice and let my spirit be self.
her creation of music is an alchemical process. It's necessary to mention alchemy when talking about the magician. Alchemy is defined as a seemingly magical process of transformation, creation, or combination. The most accessible entrance to this topic would have to be an actual experience of magic and alchemy. And this is what you had to say, though.
Yes. Or I'll do this part. Like,
Yeah,
I would recommend going to a widespread Panic concert, any kind of boogie jam bands, or an experience of the magician and alchemy in action. Or any music where you can kind of lose yourself and forget your ego and kind of dissolve into the crowd. But especially with widespread Panic, what I noticed was the musicians themselves kind of disappear into the music.
Not about their ego. So alchemy is not just turning lead into gold. Cami's transformation of pain into music is alchemy. Experiencing music, especially at a concert, is an experience of magic, of the alchemical process.
And that it's the transformation of pain into music is alchemy. I have a phrase, soul work, and one of the paths of soul work is transforming experience, including experiences of suffering into wisdom. And this is the basic of music like blues and soul, where earthy things, even pain, are kind of transformed into creativity and beauty. And that seems very much to be Cami's approach to like her anxiety and difficulties.
Yes.
At its best, magic is getting lost in the flow of effort and experience, when life feels distilled into the vibrant present. This flow I'm describing is perhaps the feeling of being in touch with the sacred. The sacred is an enchanted space. Reenchantment of the world may be necessary to break away from the solely profane, boring, flat, dull experience, from modernity sickness. Critics of Weber have said that they have seen reenchantment operating alongside disenchantment. Sometimes it's hard to exist in an enchanted world, especially, or to maintain, sometimes it's hard to maintain the enchantment, especially during difficult periods of life, but you have the power to enchant even the mundane aspects of your life. For example, you can romanticize a walk home. You can imbue meaning into your experience. Entering a sacred space and finding enchantment, again, can be overwhelming, though, so it is helpful to have guidance when harnessing the power of the magician archetype. Ideally, each person seeking sacred knowledge would have a mentor. Be mindful, however, of where you find guidance so that you don't fall under the manipulation of a shadow magician. Remember, a healthy magician aims to help you, not themselves. Guidance in the sacred can also be found in literature, such as the works of Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell, reading, films, even YouTube channels such as Story of Old can give you the education and framework you need to re-enchant the world.
How can you apply the magician to your life? The magician is the archetype to embody when you want to see change in your life, when you want to make things happen, when you are ready for a long time dream to come to fruition. The magician can help you step into personal power without the ego of the shadow side, seeing that you are an active participant in creation and that you are connected to the wisdom of the ancient past. This is why I think the magician is a healing archetype. It helps you see the sacred in the world again. What is sacred to you might be scientific or spiritual, or both. Each interpretation of sacred is valid as long as it gives you a sense of wholeness.
Actions such as reading and practicing your particular craft are necessary to tap into this archetype. But stillness is important too. Taking time to meditate or taking a walk through nature also helps you embody the energy of the magician. Getting into the right mindset can be a precursor to an entrance into the world of ideas, or the first step towards returning to dedicated action. The magician understands that each person is an individual, so accessing and embodying this archetype is different for each person. In the Stories of Old video about the magician archetype, it was said, for unlike the magician's efforts in the technological sense, which accumulate over time, the magician is the steward of our psyche, makes no lasting progress, and starts from zero with every new life. When I heard this, it was kind of some magic in my personal life, because always wondering why we've not made the progress in wisdom that we've made on the technological side of life. And this just really underlines we're not, in terms of wisdom, we're not starting somewhere different than people from the indigenous world or anywhere, any time of history.
It makes me think of the Sayaka Maralta quote we used on the third episode where she says we live the Stone Age with a veneer of contemporary society.
Yes.
Maybe that's why.
It begins to kind of reveal this. This is because before the ego can be deconstructed, it must be constructed. And every ego starts from scratch with a very specific biology, and they're born into a particular cultural and historical story or situation. You're born into a particular family and circumstances with a particular unique individual soul that matures through specific life history. This is the journey of life, and it's really the most exciting journey that we're all on, and we all start from the same place on this journey. The uniqueness could be attributed to DNA rather than the soul as an explanation if you want to go the scientific route, but it is still absolutely unique.
As Douglas Gillette and Robert Elmore wrote in King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, we are in a technological age of the magician. This purely material perspective has contributed to the mistreatment of nature, materialism, and the mistreatment of populations. Balancing the magician archetype with a sense of the sacred and an appreciation of ancient wisdom may be an important component in healing individuals and treating nature with profound appreciation. The magician knows that transformation begins within. The world might seem ominous and hopeless, but the work you do on your mind and soul contributes to the change in the world. That is magic. So that's it for this one. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.